Ohai. Berea, the city in the north of Greece, with rich history. There is at the height of 128 meters above sea level, on east slopes of the massive Hermian, in 64 kilometers to the southwest from Salonika and in 311 kilometers to the northwest from Athens. The administrative center of the community of the same name. Lima. And peripheral unit of Amatia in the periphery of Central Macedonia. Center of the Variski, Nossi and Kambaniski Metropolitanate of Hellas Orthodox Church. Titular Diocese of Catholic Church. The population of 43158 inhabitants on a census of 2011. In the city the football stadium, Berea, and football club with the same name is located. Through the city the National Road 4 runs. Alexandria Kazani. Near the city there passes to Egnatia Highway. Berea considerably grew up after World War II and now is the trade city. In the city production of fine fabrics. Cotton, linen, woolen and silk. The housecrafts, spinning mills and macaroni factories set in motion by power of water, thanks to plentiful waters of the river Tripotamus. Passing through northern districts of the city, fruit growing in the field of the city. Apples and peaches. And also canning and processing plants on processing of fruit and vegetables, refrigerators, etc. is developed. The most ancient archaeological find in the territory of Berea is burial of the early Iron Age. The 10th-8th centuries BB. About existence of the settlement on this place in an initial stage of the kingdom Arjadov Temenidov, governing in the Lower Macedonia, the necropolis of the classical period. The end of 5, the beginning of the 4th century BB. Demonstrates. For the first time the Macedonian city of Berea is mentioned by Thucydides in 431 BB in connection with an unsuccessful siege of Berea Athenians during their campaign to Chalkidiki during the Peloponnese War. Stefan Wyzyntyski and other authors give two options of origin of the name from characters of ancient Greek mythology. From Theron, Baron, or from Berea, Boar's daughter. English, Russian, the Sun Maiden. The first inhabitants are known as the tribe of Frigg, which were expelled by Macedonians. In the 3rd century BB, economic blossoming of the city begins. After fight at Pydna in 168 BB, the city surrendered to Romans. With the next Pella's decline and creation of the Roman province Macedonia in 148 BB, Berea becomes the important Macedonian center. During the Roman period, Berea was the main town of the Macedonian Union. During the era of late antiquity, Berea was a part of the province Macedonia I. Here according to the Bible. The Book of Acts of Saint Apostles, chapter 17, article. The Apostle Pavel learned between 49 and 65 after arrived from Salonika and before going to Athens. The Jan 17, 10, 15. The resident Sosipater Perov accompanied the Apostle Pavel to the peninsula of Troda in the Roman province Asia. The Jan 20. During an era of the Roman Empire, Berea became the place of worship for Christians. In the city there was the Jewish settlement on the place where the Apostle Pavel preached. The Apostolic Constitution also describes the first bishop Berea as Onesimus. Most of scientists consider that Saint Onesimus from the message to Philemon was him. At the end of the 8th century the Empress Irina built up Berea and called her by the name Iranopol. Thus some researchers carry this news to Berea Frakiskaya. Stara Zagora. During an era of the Byzantine Empire the city continued to grow and prosper. In 985 the city was taken by Bulgarians. In 1001 the Emperor Vasily II Bulgaroboitsa returned Berea under the power of Byzantium. Berea was won by the King of Sicily Wilhelm II Dobry in 1185. After falling of Constantinople in 1204 Berea was included by Boniface I Montferratsky in structure of the Thessaloniki kingdom. In 1343/44 Berea was won by the Serbian king Stefan Dusan. About 1375 the city is returned to Byzantium. In 1387 Berea is captured by the Sultan Murad of I. In 1391 Berea was captured by the Sultan Bayezid of I. In 1433 Berea finally entered the Ottoman Empire. During the Ottoman period Karaferia was called, and I entered into Solunsky. From the power Turk Berea it is exempted only in October 1912 during the First Balkan War. Sites. From era of late antiquity in the city separate burials in a necropolis, the remains of the Agora city walls. The beginning of the 3rd century. And the central street of the Roman period remained. The bases of an early Christian baptistry. The 4th century. 2 basilicas with inlaid floors. The 5-6 centuries. Erdagad. Berea was called the city of 72 churches, 48 Byzantine and post-Byzantine churches of the 11th-19th centuries, from which 39 are decorated with frescoes remain now. In church architecture of Berea Trionethni and Odenethni basilicas of the 14th-15th centuries prevail. Former Cathedral of Berea, Old Metropolitanate. Represents a Trecnethni basilica which is constructed in 1070-1080 on the place early Christian basilicas, repeats her planning. After the Turkish gain the temple was turned into the mosque named by Hünkârdaemi, the Mosque of the Victory. The minaret was attached later. In the old Metropolitanate several layers of paintings. The end of 12th, the beginning of the 14th centuries. Remained. Church of Street. John the Evangelist. Russian represents a Trecnethni basilica which is constructed at the beginning of the 13th century and is reconstructed in the 17th century. From her the altar and a part of the central nave with frescoes of the second quarter of the 13th century and the beginning of the 14th century remained. Christ Church, the Monastery of Resurrection represents the Odenethni temple which is built in 1314-1315. Painting of the temple of 1314-1315 is the only subscription work by the artist Georgios Kaliargis. Other frescoes are written in 1326, 1355 and 1727. St. Flasia's Church Represents the Odnantny temple, which is built in the 14th century and is reconstructed in the 16th century. Assume that Kaliurgis or his pupils took part in painting of the temple. About 1320. Other frescoes are dated the 16th and 18th centuries. Nicolae's Church of the Arch in Kalakrat. Represents a Treknefny basilica which is constructed in the 16th century, includes a bema of more ancient church of the 14th century where frescoes of the middle of the 14th century remained. Church of the Presentation of the Lord. Represents a Dokanefny basilica with a narthex which is constructed in the 14th century on the place of an early Christian basilica. Fragments of frescoes of the last quarter of the 14th century and painting of the temple of 1706 remained. Only Quiricus and Julitus Cross and Dome Church in Berea. Russian. The dome didn't remain. It is constructed in the middle of the 14th century and reconstructed after an earthquake of 1589. His ceramic jewelry of Katatzes. Paintings of the temple of the middle of 14, 15 and the end of the 16th centuries remained. Georgie's Church of the Arch in Grammar. Represents a Treknefny basilica with a narthex which is constructed at the beginning of the 14th century. Frescoes 1380, 1518/19, 1603, remained 1629 and 1718. The Byzantine monuments of the 14th, 15th centuries with fragments of frescoes of the Byzantine period considerably reconstructed in the next centuries. Christ Antiphonit's Church. St. George's Church, Church of the Panagia of Dexia. St. Procopi's Church. Church of the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin. Evangelistrius Panagius. St. Georgi Meli's Church. Church of the Panagia of Perivletta. Panagi Gorgoi Pikus. Church of the Panagia of Palafortisa. Arpentanosa, Church of Saints Fyodorov. Church of the Panagia of Javiera, the Paraskev Saint Church in Makariotis's arrival. Saint Savva's Church. And Saint Andrew's Church in Kiriotis's arrival. And others. In Berea the considerable number of the post-Byzantine monuments is concentrated. St. Patapia's Church, St. Anne's Church. In arrival of the prophet Eli. Christ Pantocrator's Church, St. Demetri's Church, St. Stephen's Church, St. Andrew's Church in St. George's arrival, Church of the Panagia Phanerameni, Church of the Transfiguration, the new Metropolitanate for the sake of Apostles Piet and Pavel, Anthony Navi's Basil, two churches for the sake of Saints Cosmas and Damian. Big disinterested persons. And small disinterested persons, 4 churches for the sake of Saint Nikolai. Agios Nikolous Eugurnas, Agios Nikolous that to the Mancantimus, Agios Nikolous Saras. And Saint Nikolai's Temple in Makariotis's arrival, and others. On the place of a sermon of the Apostle Pavel. Vima steps, an oratorical tribune remained. We'll erect a monument now. In the old Jewish quarter of Barbuta. Traditional houses without windows in the first floor remained. Central Public Library of Berea. It is founded in 1953. In 10 kilometers to the southeast there is a village of Regina that increases the interest of tourists in the city. The Archaeological Museum of Berea is open in 1965. A unique collection of the Byzantine icons of the 11th, 16th centuries which before were in Berea's temples is stored in the Byzantine Museum which opened in 2001. The community Berea is created in 1918. The community includes 5 settlements. The population of 44291 inhabitants on a census of 2011. Area 45.964 square kilometers. Famous natives. Alp Sadat, 1913-2006. Is the Turkish archaeologist. Mitrofan Kritopoulos, 1589-1639. Is the Greek theologian, the Patriarch Alexandria, 1636-1639. Ioannis, 1577-1658. Is the outstanding Greek scientist and the humanist of Renaissance. Karatassos Anastasios, 1766-1830. The hero of liberating war of Greece of 1821-1829. Same as Karatassos' father. Tumern George, 1868-1957. The Romanian historian, the poet. Stefanos Papagalos -1910. Makedonoma. The fighter for reunion of Macedonia against Greece. The commander of insurgent group. Karafoli Li. 1901-1983. The Greek and Romanian scientist and the aviation engineer. Hafs Pantelis. I was born. 1978. The football player, the player of Greek national team, the champion of Europe of 2004. Sonia Theodorodou. World famous Greek soprano. Itoudis, Dimitris 1970. The Greek basketball trainer. Since 2014 till present the head coach of CSKA Basketball Club. The champion of Basketball Euroleague of ULIB of 2016 as the head coach. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.